you guys? Welcome to Modern Music Expo, the online expo for the 21st century music creator. So today I'm going to be interviewing Jason Wu, who goes by Rabitt, who's an incredible songwriter and producer, born and raised in China and currently living in Los Angeles. Rabitt's worked with artists like Andy Grammer, Verite, Eric Nam, King and Prince, and many others. And today he's going to be showing us one of his songs and his process for producing that song and writing it as well. So I'm super excited to chat with him, find out a little bit more about how he does things, how he digs into tracks. So without further ado, let's just get going. All right, guys, I'm here with Rabitt, and I'm so excited for this production workshop. So to be real with y'all, this is our second time doing it because the first time we tried to do it, we had such insane technical difficulties that it was totally not editable at all. But I think this time we're going to slay it. And I'm super stoked because I obviously have already heard the song the first time and I know it's amazing. And I know a lot of the production techniques are really amazing in here. And honestly, since our first Zoom that we did, the one trick that you showed with vocal synth, I've been using it and I've been loving it. So you're about to show us some really cool stuff and I'm super excited for it.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yay.
I mean, it's like the second time, so I don't know what to say. I don't remember what I said the first time.
I don't remember what I said either.
I'm sure it'll be better this time. I was probably super awkward and like
No, you were great. We just had terrible sound. But this time will be good. Yeah, let's just tell us a little bit more about the song and yeah, let's just look at the tracks.
So this is a song I did with an artist named Matthew Chaim. We made this song maybe 2 years ago. And what I love about his project is we kind of experiment with a lot of things and experiment with just throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks and not trying to like fit any type of mold. And that's kind of why I wanted to show the song because I'm proud of it. And I think production wise, it's pretty cool.
Maybe I'm scared cause I feel too much. Maybe I run just to push my luck. Maybe we wait for an interrupt. Slow us down, silent till we're done. Emerald ties seem to come too soon. Empty your sky full of red balloons. Watching your life like you watch the moon. Slowing down, silent then you're done. But not yet.
One of the things that we love to do is every time we would, have a session together, the way that we'd start a song, we'd always want to try like these funky ways of starting things. So we're like, hey, Matt, why don't you just go on the mic and no key, no tempo, whatever, just mumble melodies or just mumble rhythms and timings or whatever. And then we'll take that and try to chop it up and make it like a motif. So that mumble turned into, after warping it and flipping it up an octave and then melodizing it and auto-tuning all this stuff, reverb, it became that. And then now it's throughout the whole song.
Did the word balloons come from that? Because it does sound like he's saying balloon.
Great catch. So after we made the track, we actually brought in a good friend, Haley Jean Penner, who's a good friend and great songwriter of ours, to help kind of write the song around this track. And she's also the type of writer who's just, she takes from what she hears, and she definitely heard balloons. And I think like that's kind of how the title came about.
I was suspecting that because it doesn't sound like red balloons, but it sounds like hot balloons. That's what it sounds like he's saying.
Right. Yeah.
That's
That's kind of what I love about vocals too. It's like it's so, I mean, the human voice just makes a lot of weird stuff, and when you manipulate it, you kind of hear new things from the voice. And I don't think you can really get that from anything else. I mean, I think real instruments and real voice is the way to go. I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, I think a really great instrumentalist can get such interesting things out of their instrument. But
Totally.
I feel like any speaker or singer, just about any person with a voice can do really cool things with a voice on a microphone.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I sound so low because I have headphones on.
You sound great, I promise.
Okay, I feel like my voice is so low.
No, no, you're good.
But yeah, okay, so yeah, that's the opening riff. I also want to show this thing. I remember I missed it last time, and it was this. Because that's how the song starts, and this is also one of the earlier things of the beginning of the track, and how the whole track started. And this came from this little thing.
The whistle.
Yeah. It's kind of like through the window, like it sounds like that. And I remember this came from this app I think I was telling you last time called Radio with 5 O's, and it is an app where it's like a picture of the globe, and you can select the countries and select the year, and it will play what was on the radio in that time period. So you can select like 1960 in Nigeria, what they were playing. And this was through that. So for sure, some sort of copyright infringement I'm violating here, but that's where it comes from.
I think that's such a unique way to produce, though. I find that so fun that you're like, I'm just gonna look at this random app and see what's
Yeah.
there. I think it's fun.
I mean, inspiration comes from anywhere, right? Like wherever I can find it, I'll try to. I mean, Splice is, I think, for most people, a big source of inspiration, and there's no reason why you can't find that in other places.
I agree. I mean, obviously, like I not only use Splice, I have a pack on Splice. I'm now an instructor
Mhm.
on Splice. Like I definitely like
Self plug, I love it.
it's a plug. But at the same time, it's like even I sometimes get like I don't want to say bored with Splice because that's not it, but it's almost kind of like I just want to go somewhere else. I want a different interface. I want something that's just
Yeah.
totally different. Like I use ADSR a lot of the times. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
they're not as exposed to Splice, but also like have great stuff on there. Like I don't know
Right.
if producers you like keep doing this year after year. Like inspiration is a hot commodity, and you have to
Yeah,
work
and
hard.
also like, so everyone has access to Splice, and I remember before Splice was a thing, I remember a time where producers would be like, "Hey, I just got these like hot samples, like you got to check them out," and you
Yeah,
would like share them via like USB sticks and stuff,
yeah.
and it was a time where it's like, "Oh, he's got the fat kicks," like Danny's got the fat kicks. Danny's actually a friend of mine, but
I
for the
love.
sake, I'm just using that as a name. But now it's like everyone has access to these samples, and I think part of our job is to try. We have to also go out of our way to look for new things. You know?
It's so true. I mean, it's very tempting, like, because some splice samples are so good. And as a
They're
songwriter,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
as a songwriter, sometimes I'm just like, "Ugh, I could just, like, I already hear melodies on this. Like, I want to write to this, but
Hmm.
then you have to remember anybody else can use it, create a song on top of it as well. It's not as unique. So a lot of
Yeah.
times, yeah, like what you're doing with creating your own, either finding unusual samples or creating some out of a voice, or I work with a lot of like instrumentalists, like one of my favorite co-producers, he's a great guitar player and we're always having him
Hmm.
play because it is gonna be unique when he plays.
Right. And I mean, it's kind of like sampling. A lot of hip hop producers sampled back in the day, and they don't sample just the most current stuff. They like dig for months to find like the coolest sample, and then they flip it in a way that almost makes a sample their own. And I kind of feel the same way when I use splice. It's like everyone has the same thing, but is there a way you can flip it to make it your own in a way?
That's so true. This reminds me, I want to get back to you showing stuff, but this is like such a good
Uh-huh.
conversation. This reminds me of like 2005 or 2006. This is way before I was a producer, but I was working as a singer with a producer.
Hmm.
And my song was called Piano and Sax, like saxophone.
Hmm.
So
Cool.
I remember he had these like stacks of like actual vinyl records that he went through, and he worked like late into the night to find
Hmm.
really cool saxophone samples to
Hmm.
put over
Hmm.
my piano playing in the
Hmm.
intro, and then he sampled them, and it was so cool.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. I'm a big fan of sampling. I used to be against it, but now I'm like, oh, cool. You can actually use so much with it. Why would you be not open to like this whole place that you can explore, you know?
Totally. But yeah, no, that sounds amazing. I think what would be really cool if you could maybe look at the chorus, because I really love so much of what's going on there. The drums,
Sure.
that kind of sawtooth type of synth that's there, the bass, the vocals. Yeah, if you can just kind of show us what all is
Yeah.
there.
So this is the drums soloed.
I feel like it's a
Um,
very unique drum pattern. I like those two crashes at the top.
Thank you. I don't think I did it on purpose, as I don't do anything on purpose. I think I think I really ran this point to the ground last time, but everything's kind of an accident. But I will give credit to I did play drums in college, and I did play drums growing up. So I think there is some sort of rhyme and reason to the patterns that I make, but I kind of just try to make the patterns that fit whatever song I'm doing. And in this case, it's kind of a weird one.
I do like it because like me not being a drummer, I do think I'm a pretty good drum programmer, but I do
Hmm.
sometimes like tend to just think like very basic. Like, oh, like on this
Hmm.
song I probably would have just done a snare on the 2 and the 4. There we go.
Right.
But what you did with the snares, like where they hit, I think is pretty unusual.
Thank you. Unusual. I love unusual. I love that. um, I will say, I think being a drummer, one thing that I think a lot of programming can benefit from is ghost snares. And I think people don't realize how important those can be.
What
Kind
are
of
those
like
snares for our listeners?
for the common peeps.
Oh my God, I
Um,
didn't mean it like that.
I'm just, no, I'm just kidding. They're just like basically when you're drumming, a lot of times in a group, for example, where the snare hits on the 2 and 4, you have ghost snares, which is like a quieter version of like hitting the snare that comes in between the 2 and 4 to kind of emphasize the 2 and the 4, or like bring like a subliminal backbeat, like a backbeat's the wrong word, subliminal like other rhythm that
Hmm.
complements the backbeat. The backbeat's the 2 and 4, and utilizing ghost snares in your stuff just makes it sound more real and sound more human. And I think when I program drums, I try to make it as human as possible. I don't always program on the grid. I think I try to just use my ears and just like shift it according to like how it sounds. I never really look at the grid when I'm making drums, except for the downbeats. I'll have that on the grid. But
That's super cool. Yeah, that's really unusual. That's definitely a drummer's way to do it.
don't know if it's the right way, but it's a way. So
It sounds really cool. One thing
thank
it
you.
reminds me of, I never got too far with this, but at one point I was really into like taking drum tutorials on YouTube, but on
Mm.
a keyboard.
Oh, cool, cool. Yeah,
It's actually kind of cool, like kind of learning the drummer's perspective and then trying
yeah,
to utilize that with like a hip hop drum kit on
for sure. Yeah, yeah.
programming thing. So,
I,
yeah.
I I remember like in college, I went to school for music, and I remember kind of stopping playing drums because realizing everyone else was so much better than me. So I started producing, But then I never put two and two together, and I never put, well, let me take what I've learned from drumming into producing. I kind of just saw producing as this like whole new trajectory in like music making. So I was just making drums along the grid and being like, well, this is how you produce. But then I didn't realize you can combine the two skills you have and try to like program as if you're playing. And I think like watching people use their drum pads to program drums gave me that realization of like, oh, it's still an instrument. You still should be playing it as if it's an instrument. That's how you make things that sound, you know, more raw and I don't know, better, hopefully.
Yeah, I feel you.
So the kicks, I've layered the kicks. There are 3 kicks, and they sound like this. That's not a kick. There are 2 kicks. There are 2 kicks, and it's just I have 2 kicks. I like to have a low pounding kick and then maybe like a higher sounding kick to kind of fill the spectrum of kicks. So this is one of the kicks. I'm assuming that's going to be like the lower one, and then this is the deader one, and combined it kind of gives, I don't know, like a fuller kick.
Gives like a punch and the low end. That's cool.
Yeah. And then the snare, this is the snare with a little ghost snare. So that higher pitch thing is what I'm acting as a ghost snare.
I love it.
And then this, what I thought was a kick, I think is also some sort of percussion and snare. And that's also acting kind of like this ghost snare. And everything else is just embellishments like the crash and yeah.
That's
so that it comes all together.
Super sick.
So this is an electric guitar. It's not an electric guitar. It is let's see what it is. This originally is it is an electric guitar.
Yeah.
What is that?
I'm like, what is that? Sounds like a little like 808 tom or something with like the high end EQ.
Right. I had something unmuted.
Cool.
So this is just an electric guitar.
Did you play that?
Yeah, I played that. I try to play as many real things as I physically can. I'm not very good at any instruments. I can hang, but I try to make up for it with my post-production chops.
I'm like you. Yeah, I'm like okay on piano, pretty good. My guitar playing's like very much not it, but
what I love is every time we play we get a little better. So you know, we had that. So this was flipped up an octave. It was warped to time. I put Camel Crusher on it. I don't think I've used this plugin in a long time. It doesn't even open properly. So
yeah, it's
reverb.
Discontinued at this point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is, because I remember I was using it in like some tutorials and people were like, "Oh, it looks so good." Oh, wait, it's been discontinued. So they looked it up and they told me that.
Interesting, because it was free. I think it was free.
I think so.
And that's why I have it.
Makes sense.
And then Mondo Mod. Someone showed me this. It's kind of like a self panner, but you can use it to manipulate it to make it kind of like a tremolo thing.
Yeah, I haven't used Mondo Mod in years. Oh, that sounds so good.
And then I compressed it and then EQ'd it. Yeah, that's cool. That.
I know you leave soon.
So in context, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. What do you have in your vocal processing bus?
The vocal. So I have a different vocal chain, like a vocal session to reduce latency. So this is this is kind of my my
Print.
oops. Yeah, my print. It's just an acapella.
Gotcha.
But honestly, I don't do too much. I can just like leak it. Not that anybody wants it, but it's
We get.
I just use CL76, CLA vocals, and a decapitator. And then I have it goes to a bus that just has a bunch of like wave compressors and EQs, but like nothing fancy. I kind of just get it to a certain point so the mixer can hear what I'm trying to do, and then I let them do their magic. I used to think there is some like secret amazing $10,000 outboard vocal
That's what everybody's
hardware.
asking me. Like, what's your secret for vocals? I'm like, I literally use like 6 plugins for
Yeah, same.
everything.
I will say, if I can give a tip, it's like less is more. Don't overcomplicate, because I think when you start overcomplicating, especially vocals, it starts to sound worse. There's a point where it sounds
Yeah.
good, and then it starts to sound worse,
I know.
because now you're taking away the natural like things about it.
It's true. The natural things are really important. One thing, like recently, I've even kind of stopped compressing vocals. Like
Really?
I clip gain them. Yeah, and it sounds.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's more work. I like honestly,
Mhm.
I do this on my own project.
Mhm.
It's like a lot of work and a lot of time, but
Yeah.
I like how it sounds. Yeah, eventually I'll
Right.
just take off all the compressors and just clip gain.
Yeah. And someone also told me like the initial raw file, like the sound that it comes in from the mic is the most important part, and then everything else is just polishing it. So as long as you make sure whatever is coming in, that initial file is clean and it's like a good take, then you're already set up for success. But if you record something and it's clipping and it's, or it's too quiet, or the vocal take just isn't good itself, then you're not going to get good vocals.
Oh, it's so true. And the main thing is like you can always tune too. Like we're all of us that do this professionally, I think we're all good at tuning, but like
Yeah.
you can't fix a performance. Like if it's low
Mhm.
energy or like a weird enunciation, like you can't fix that.
Yeah, you can't tune that.
Yeah, so I'm
I
always
remember working with some younger artists, and then they'd be like, you can fix that later, right? And I'm like, no,
no,
I
no.
can't fix your shitty voice. I'm sorry.
What he said.
Hey, I didn't say any names, so really I could be talking about myself. But I've worked with a lot of shitty singers. As I think we all have throughout the years. Like
Everybody.
not everyone's good at singing.
No, and then I've worked with a lot of just like inexperienced singers too that could be good.
Right.
Like it just
Hmm.
takes years to become good on the mic, and it's a different skill than
Oh
perform.
my God, yeah.
Yeah, it's
The
totally.
amount of times someone will sing in the room and be like, that sounds great. And then they get on the mic and then it just sounds completely different because they have like stage fright when they're in front of the minute you hit record, it's just all out the window. I mean, the
Totally.
whole spectrum of
Totally.
different
It's
things.
totally different. And like it's funny, like for me as a singer, it's the opposite. I'm honestly not like bragging, but I'm really good at recording because like I
Uh-huh.
do this all day for myself and for others.
Yeah.
Second you sit me down and ask me to sing live, oh, it's so
Right.
scary.
Because it's a totally different skill. Like you said, you have to have experience in recording singing. Like it's a totally different side of your brain. Like
Totally
just because you're good at singing doesn't mean you're going to be a great recording artist.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes
Go ahead.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's like all about details. It's being really dialed into the tiniest details of your own voice. What were you gonna say?
Totally. No, I think sometimes like you can have the greatest voice but not the best recording voice.
Or the opposite.
Which which is like I'll have these artists come in and they have the mousiest voice. Like I'm like, what did you say? Like I cannot even hear you. And then they record it and it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Like some voices just work really well with compressors and like recorded vocals, and some just don't.
It's so true. It's a totally different skill. And yeah, and then for live performance, I mean, like there's a whole stamina thing with even how you breathe too. Like when I try to sing live, I know that I lack that. I'm like, I need vocal lessons just to be able to like get through my takes without having to take a breath because I'm not used to it. I'm used to doing tiny sections.
Yeah. So eat your broccoli, kids.
Eat your broccoli, drink your milk.
That's yeah, that's the pro tip I want to give. Let's see what else there is here. Oh, cool. Okay, that's I think that's something cool to show, I guess. This is what it sounds like originally. This is what was bleeding over to the guitar, that like random pluggy thing. So originally, this is a yeah. This might be already like rebounced, but I think it's like muting the piano and just like hitting the keys. And so I chopped out a section of it, warped it, and then pitched it down, and then EQ'd it. But then this is the cool thing, using a gate to just randomly pick when it lets it through. So a gate is just essentially what it says. It's a gate, and it lets certain sounds through when it's past a certain threshold, and you can control the threshold. So if it's, I think it's a volume thing. I'm not sure, but if it's a certain volume, then it'll let it through. And then so you can kind of have cool effects like that, which I think is kind of neat.
I think that's amazing. I don't think I've ever used a gate in that like creative of a capacity. That's a cool, like almost like machine composition kind of thing. That's neat.
Yeah. And I kind of like the randomness of it. It's kind of a cool way to start things, like when you have, because it's random, so you can now build something not random around it to make it seem like it was on purpose.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I love about starting things random. It's like you can kind of turn this random thought into something where people are like, wow, like how did you think about that? And I'm just kind of like, I didn't. It was random. So
I do love randomness. I think it's like the most fun way to compose. I mean, of course, sometimes we're very deliberate, but it's always so exciting when something just happened. You're like, wait, that was really cool.
Yeah.
I used your vocal synth trick on a track yesterday, and it was so interesting. So I just like played the chords, and then I pulled in like a super random like dance block sample or whatever.
Yeah.
For some reason, vocal synth made it sound like a kind of gnarly electric guitar, and then it changed the chords too. And I was like, wait,
I know, it's so sick. It's so sick. Oh well, that's a good segue into the vocal synth.
Yeah, I definitely, please show that, because that has kind of changed my life when you showed it to me last time.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm so happy. So this is the vocal synth. So what it is to begin with is, as I unmute all of these plugins, it is a static sound.
Yeah.
And I forget where I got the static sound from. It might just be like turning on, I have this OP1 thing that I bought when I first signed my deal 38 years ago. And it was like a little gift to myself. And I honestly like didn't use it much, but with this project with Matt, it's all about experimenting. So I'm like, you know what, let me like play around with it. And I think there's this radio setting also. This is a theme, radio. And there's just a bunch of static noises, and I recorded that. And then what I basically did was ran it through vocal synth. And the way it works is it's just a vocoder. So you can run any sound through vocal synth and match it with like MIDI notes, and it'll play chords. And so I ran it through vocal synth and matched it with these MIDI notes up here. And then it turns into. Yeah.
I just love how lush it sounds. It sounds really cool, and it has like, I don't know, a little bit of that organic quality, I think, from that noise sample. I think it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the most fun when you can turn like an organic sample, whether it's like a guitar or even like static sounds that are like real sounds, into musical things. There's just like, I don't know, there's just like this liveness to it. It's less, I love synths, but synths are just synths, you know? Like it will always sound like
Synths are
synths.
just synths. Rabbit. What
Yeah.
do you want?
Nothing against them. Like they'll do what they need to do. But if you want something that sounds like alive, I think it's pretty important to make things that are alive. And then, you know,
100%. I mean, I'm there with you. I feel the same way about synths. I don't know, unless I'm making like a specific like synth pop song, I
mhm,
kind of
mhm.
get very like, ugh, but it doesn't sound like even remotely real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. There's a time and place. Like if you're doing like an EDM banger,
Oh
then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
for sure get the thickest synth bass you can find. But you know, different things for different things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the vocal. Let's see. Uh, and I think this is just a low octave of it. So the same process, except the MIDI notes are an octave lower. That's pretty much it. So that's pretty much the chorus, and then this is a.
Yeah, did we I was gonna say, did we look at the bass?
That's just a live bass. I just played it. Nothing special. I don't think it's even. It's just compressed and then EQ'd. I don't even have an app on it.
I wish I could play bass. I always hear live bass and I'm like, ugh. I can't
It
play.
is so useful to know. I think
Yeah.
bass is awesome. And then let's see what this is. It's just plucks. It's a Prophet. It's just a pluck, and then this is a.
Oh, that's nice.
This is a CS80 bass. It's called electric gas bass, and it's probably the only time I've ever used it, but I think it works. I don't know.
It sounds really good. Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I look at my own tracks, like older tracks, and I'll be like, I've never used this plugin on anything else. Like
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
feeling like really creative and wanting to try something new, and then
hmm
never used it again.
No, you have a point because I think a lot of times what happens is when we're like in the thick of sessions and you don't have you're working with someone new, you're not going to sit there for 3 hours finding like the coolest bass. You kind of just go to stuff that works.
Hmm.
So I really appreciate um, sessions or with writers where you're just able to like explore and kind of like find new things, and it's fun.
Yeah, we've talked about this last time. You had a lot of really great wisdom on this point of collaborating because I'm there with you of like new sessions. It can be awkward when you're like, I want to make something really unique and cool, but you're sitting there and waiting and I don't
hmm
know you. It's kind of
Right.
awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
we've talked about it because, yeah, I think, like I said, like I still feel pretty uncomfortable in sessions with like brand new people that I don't know.
hmm
How are you feeling about that now?
it's so funny because yesterday I was having a conversation with my girlfriend about anxiety in like what we do. She's a makeup artist and she like
Mm,
is kind of in the beginning stages of her career, so she gets really nervous for her gigs and stuff. And I'm kind of like, I am right there with you. Like when I first started, I would be so nervous before each session that the day before I'd be like, I cannot go out, I cannot go to dinner, like I have to stay home and mentally prepare for this session. Like it's going to be strangers in my house tomorrow. It's so overwhelming. And then it kind of like after you do that hundreds and thousands of times, I still get nervous, but
yeah.
it just shows in different ways. Like I don't, you know, lose sleep over it. I still live my life, but 30 minutes before the session, I'm still kind of like, oh my God, a new person's going to come. Like, I hope we get along. I hope we make something good. I hope it's not awkward. Like the anxiety is still there. It's just, I'm used to it now and I have ways to kind of like subdue it. But it's still there, but it shows that we love what we do. I think if you're not anxious, you don't really like what you do,
Yeah, because you don't
you know?
care. Yeah, it's really
Exactly.
true.
Yeah.
It's really, really true. And you just never know how it goes with other people because sometimes you like totally connect and you're like, oh my God, this is so unexpectedly awesome.
Mm.
and sometimes you almost like kind of really hope that it goes well because you want it to because of like the situation, and then it doesn't,
Yeah.
and you're just like
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Totally, totally.
yeah, and
Um,
it's one of those things. I think a lot of new people haven't collaborated as much, so I get asked a lot about collaborating, and I'm just like, yeah, it's hard, especially if you're not like
totally.
a super extroverted person, which I think like no producer is.
Mhm.
I don't really know
Yeah,
any super extroverted producers.
yeah. I mean, there's a reason why we like to sit in front of the computer for hours on our own. You know, I would say like I'm pretty extroverted, but definitely not as extroverted as some of the artists that I work with. Like,
No.
I don't want to go out every night and like, I don't know, hang out with people every night. But I do like people a lot. I think
I,
you kind of have to like people to a certain extent to do what we do.
You definitely do. Yeah, I just think it's like some of us like really need maybe times to just work on tracks on our own
Hmm.
or like
Hmm.
relax like on our own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
There's a
100%.
whole mental health component that goes into this whole thing.
Yeah, therapy's cool.
Therapy is
Let's just put
cool.
that out there.
Kids, eat your broccoli and go to therapy.
Yeah, and therapy's cool. And synths are just synths.
Yes, yes. Wisdom
So
from Rabbit.
yeah, useless wisdom, but it's there. Um, okay, I remember talking about the ending too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll just play the ending and then we'll talk about it.
You gotta take time.
Cool. So thanks for listening to that whole minute.
No,
I
I
knew this
actually
was
love
gonna be
it.
that long.
I love that it kind of took me on a journey. I feel like very relaxed and I felt like it was kind of rolling with the sections.
Oh,
It
hell
was
yeah.
really nice ending. Yeah. Can you talk about the newer elements that you added into that?
Yeah, so the post chorus, like instrumental section, I added this. And then that is a, let's see. That is a, I think this was a an outboard synth that I borrowed, and it's kind of sounds like an arpeggiator. Again, it's kind of like a randomizer kind of thing, and I just picked up a note and then compressed it, put reverb, and then EQ'd it, and then just like worked on the pitch of the notes. And I think that bend was just done on Ableton, like this clip and transpose, and you can just, yeah, I just bent it.
That's so sick.
And then another new element is, oh, the chord change at the end. I think again, with this project, we kind of like wanted to just do what we want. And at this ending part, we're like, why not just throw like a completely new section as like an outro with new chords and
I really liked it. It felt really natural. It felt really musical.
thank you. What a compliment. Thanks.
It really did. It kind of like it got me away from that loop and it got me into a new space, but it was still tied in with the other samples.
Right.
I was like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah, because we're still using this and it's just it's just a chord change. And
Are you playing a live piano?
it is not a live piano, it is a Rhodes.
Oh, gotcha. Cool. Oh, there you go.
This is the FM8 literally opening patch, and I've used it maybe 5 million times.
Honestly, I will say an opening patch in a plugin is like one of the most important things. There are certain
Yeah.
plugins I love because their opening patch is so good, and I don't have time to like look for things. I'm like, that thing works. I love it. And maybe with like a little
Mhm.
something, it's like awesome.
I've used it so many times that every time I open it as kind of like a placeholder, because I just want to like get my ideas through, and then the writers would be like, that's a cool sound, and then I'm kind of just stuck with using it because now I'm like, shit, I gotta use it again. But I mean, if it works, it works, I guess. And it's just a sine patch, like it's just sine waves, so it's not like I'm reinventing the wheel.
There's a lot you can do with the sine wave though, with added effects.
I know, it's a major pillar of a wave, so synth's just a synth. Yeah, and then we added like a vocal section at the end that, oh, this is kind of cool, I guess.
Is that vocal synth?
This is I think there's a bunch of vocal synth in it, but it's in another session.
Gotcha.
But I basically threw an auto tune on the acapella, which I never do. I don't know why you would, but it kind of, and then I threw the tune on really hard just for this section to kind of have this like really robotic sound just for the end.
Yeah, because I thought it was a vocoder stack.
I think it is.
Okay.
So I'm putting auto tune on literally the whole acapella, which is like
the
all the layers of the vocals. Yeah. And it kind of does this weird robot-y thing with all the vocals. Yeah. And then that's the whole song, I think.
Well, I love it. I think there's so many creative techniques you used in a song. It's really just like kind of shows people that you don't have to stick with the tried and true. There's always new stuff you can try. There's always interesting, unusual ways to compose that can inspire you and elevate your sound into a different place.
Totally. Amen. So true.
All right, man.
So true.
Well, thank you so much for doing this and sharing your expertise. This has been really, really, really fun. I'll just ask, because I know you're very wise about this from the last time we talked, if you could give one piece of advice to a younger producer, what would it be?
What did I say last time?
I don't remember.
Oh, no. A piece of advice. Oh, well, I think just do what you feel like is the right thing to do, like in terms of if you're trying to make things that sound like other people, I just don't think that will be a very long-lasting career. I think if you want a long-lasting career, you should really strive to do what makes you feel creatively fulfilled, and I guarantee at some point it'll pay off and it will all make sense, and you will have your own sound as opposed to imitating what other people are doing. I think imitating is important. That's how you learn. But at a certain point, you have to just do what makes you feel creatively fulfilled.
I think that's actually a really amazing piece of advice for newer producers and even like producers that are in it. You know, it is very tempting to just copy something. But, you know, and it, like you said, at one point in the beginning, that is really valid and valuable to copy things to learn, like with that purpose in mind. But when you really are trying to develop your own sound, yeah, like digging into what you want, like listening to your gut, that is really what is going to take you.
Totally. And also just like never settle on thinking you've kind of like reached your creative peak. You know, I think at every point you should always be striving to like learn new things and kind of push your sound forward. Like that's why I'm very open to showing people what I do and like the techniques, and I don't care if you take vocal synth and do your own thing to it.
Not
because
gonna sound like
one,
you at all because it's
yeah, it's
my
not gonna sound
brain
nothing
looking at
like
it,
mine.
you know?
Totally.
Yeah,
And I
I do
definitely
it.
know people who like to hold on to their techniques like it's their
Yeah.
fucking baby. Um, but
I know
yeah.
I'm not like that at all because I'm just like I'll show you the techniques because it's like not the technique that makes a producer, it's their mind. That's what makes the
Hmm.
producer. Like you give the same technique to five producers and you get five different tracks. That's what's really
Yeah,
cool about
exactly.
it. It's very
Yeah.
personal. And I agree
Yeah.
with what you said too. I think like the thing about finding your sound is not static, it's dynamic. Like just
Hmm.
because like 2 years ago, like this thing felt like it was totally your sound and it was and it felt authentic, it doesn't mean that now you still have to keep doing that if it's no longer inspiring you.
Yeah. And I mean, take it from someone who's been doing this for a little while, like it will always be more rewarding when you do what what you feel passionate about. I think it's easy to get lost in the sauce. Like let's say, people who are listening, you get signed and you move to the music industry and you start like working in the music industry. I think it's really easy to lose your way and start making things that other people want you to make because they think it's right and it's not even necessarily what you love anymore, and you're going to be so wrapped up in it that you forget why you do it in the first place, and then you become like everyone else and you just sound like everyone else. And it's always more rewarding to just stick with what you think is right. Literally be Kanye. That's my advice,
Be Kanye, Rabbit,
minus the
2021.
crazy parts. Yeah.
I love that. All right. Well, I think on that we will wrap. This was an amazing session. I'm so excited to look through this and edit this and get this out in the world. Thank you so much, Rabbit, for being a part of the Modern Music Expo.
Thanks for having me.